I still remember the exact sound the grocery cart made when I turned that corner at Trader Joe's. One of those quiet days where everything feels routine. Until it doesn't. I was reaching for almond milk when I heard someone yelling, really yelling near the entrance. A manager was berating a customer about parking in a loading-only zone, completely losing his cool in front of half the store and the guy being yelled at. He just stood there red-faced, looking like he wanted to disappear. That guy was Fabian. I don't know what came over me. Maybe I hate public conflict. Maybe it was the way he looked so embarrassed. But I walked over, heart pounding, hands cold, and said something like, "Hey, the signage out there is pretty unclear. Maybe we can all just take a breath." The manager rolled his eyes and mumbled something, but he backed off. Fabian looked at me like I'd just saved his life. At checkout, he approached me. His smile was crooked in this boyish, charming way that made my heart do a stupid little flutter. He asked if he could buy me coffee sometime to say thank you. I hesitated, then said yes, and that was the beginning. Our first date was coffee. Our second was a museum. Our third was a walk through the park, followed by dinner at a hole-in-the-wall Italian place he insisted had the best tiramisu in the city. And he was right. I started falling for him before I even realized it was happening. He was attentive in all the ways that mattered, remembered little details, texted, "Good morning" every day without fail, listened like he actually cared. I hadn't felt that seen in a long time. My parents were always supportive of me emotionally, financially, everything. They helped me get set up in my own apartment after college while I figured out what I wanted to do long term. Dad co-signed my lease and helped cover car payments when things got tight. I felt a little guilty sometimes, but they always reassured me. "We want to help you get started. You'll pay it forward someday." When Fabian's lease fell through about 8 months into us dating, he moved in with me. It felt fast, sure. But he said it made sense, and honestly, at the time, it did. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. My mom liked him right away, said he was polite, helpful, well-spoken. My dad was more reserved. He's always been cautious with people, especially when it comes to me. But after a few months and a few rounds of golf even, he seemed to approve. We felt like a real couple, like the kind you see in commercials, cooking together, grocery shopping, binging shows on rainy Saturdays. My friends said I glowed, that I seemed more myself around him. I believed them. But things started shifting when his parents began visiting more. They lived about an hour away and started dropping by for Sunday brunches or midweek dinners. His mom, Lydia, was always full of compliments. "You keep such a lovely home," or "Your cooking is amazing." Dear, his dad, Arthur, was quieter but polite enough, but something about them always felt a little performative, like they were rehearsing being nice instead of actually meaning it. One night, Lydia got misty-eyed over my living room decor and said, "It's been so long since we felt this kind of warmth." "Fabian is golden. I hope you two stay together forever." Arthur nodded solemnly. I smiled, said, "Thank you," played the part, but something about it felt off. Then came the small comments, the micro jabs. Fabian started making these jokes about how lucky he was to score someone with a great family and great credit. Or he'd glance at the new coffee table and say, "Wow, your dad really treats you like royalty, huh?" At first, I brushed them off, but they kept coming. He didn't talk much about his job. He said he was in between things, but always had big ideas, big dreams, big plans, yet somehow he never quite took the next step. Every time my dad brought up his business, Fabian suddenly turned into this overly curious, oddly attentive version of himself, asking specific questions, poking around like he was trying to memorize the family blueprint. I ignored it, or maybe I just didn't want to believe it. But something in me had already started to shift. I wasn't sure what it was, but it felt like a splinter under my skin. You can't always see it, but it itches. And when you press the right spot, it hurts. I started to wonder if everything, the smiles, the attention, the us was real, or just convenient. And that question, that doubt, that's when the cracks began. There's something eerie about realizing your life is a performance, and you're the only one in the audience who doesn't know it's a show. The night everything cracked open wasn't a storm or a fight or some big screaming match. It was quieter than that. It was a dinner at Fabian's parents' house, steaks, wine, soft jazz playing from a Bluetooth speaker. Lydia touched my arm too much. Arthur asked the same questions about my dad's company that he'd asked before, like he'd rehearsed them. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way Fabian looked, a little too polished, a little too smug. Before I left the table to go slice pie, I hit record on the voice memo app on my phone and left it there, screen down next to the wine glasses. The kitchen was separated by a half wall, and as I cut neat little triangles of pie, I heard it. His laugh, the one he uses when he wants to impress people, I knew it too well. Then his voice lower now. She's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable while I figure things out. My hand froze on the knife. I'll stick around long enough to squeeze what I can out of her. Then I'll find someone worth showing off. Arthur snorted, amused. Lydia's voice, calm polished, slid in like silk. Just don't get her pregnant. You don't want to be tied to that family forever. And Fabian replied, God, no. Her dad's an arrogant old goat. If it wasn't for the money, I wouldn't even say hello. I didn't scream. I didn't slam anything or throw the pie at the wall like in some movie. I finished slicing it, stacked the plates, and walked back into that dining room with a smile that didn't belong to me. I served them dessert. I let him kiss my cheek. I complimented Lydia's garden and helped clean up. I played my part perfectly because I didn't know what else to do. Back at our apartment, Fabian kicked off his shoes, flopped on the couch, and asked if we could binge that reality show he liked. I nodded, said I'd be right there. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the tile floor with the recording playing over and over again in my headphones. I must have listened to it a dozen times that night, hoping I'd misheard, that it was a joke, that it meant something else. But no, his voice was clear. Cold, calculated, cruel. I didn't confront him that night or the next, I just watched. I watched how he'd casually check my dad's Facebook or LinkedIn. When he thought I wasn't paying attention, I noticed how he only suggested visiting my parents when our pantry was running low. I saw how he'd bring up his student loans or financial struggles when my dad was around. Subtle, manipulative practice. I barely slept. I stopped eating more than a few bites at a time. I started locking the bathroom door and just sitting on the floor. My world had shifted under me and I didn't know where to put my feet anymore. Fabian noticed something was off. Sure, but he didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't hold me or sit me down or even show concern. He just got annoyed. Are you PMSing or something? God, are we really doing the dramatic silence thing now? Every time he opened his mouth, I saw that dinner table, heard his laugh, felt the knife pause in my hand. It was my mom who finally broke through the fog. She stopped by unannounced one afternoon, just popped in with a bag of groceries and that mom sense that knows when something's wrong. She took one look at me and went still. Sweetheart, what's going on? Is he hurting you? I didn't cry. I'd gone past crying. Do you want to hear something? I asked. She nodded. Lips tight. Just don't interrupt, okay? I pulled out my phone, opened the voice memos, and pressed play. We sat in silence while Fabian's voice filled our little kitchen. Her hands curled tighter and tighter around her coffee mug. Her face blank at first began to tremble as the words landed. If it wasn't for the money, I wouldn't even say hello. When the recording ended, she didn't speak. She just stood, walked to the hallway, grabbed her coat, and said, "Don't let him come back here tonight." Where are you going? I asked. To your father, and then she was gone. Fabian texted me that night like nothing had happened, grabbing drinks with the guys. BB back late. Don't wait up. I didn't answer. I opened my laptop instead, created a Google Doc to-do list, get him out. I didn't know how yet, but I knew it had to happen. I couldn't keep living with someone who looked me in the eyes and called me the love of his life, while planning to leave once the money dried up. The next morning, my dad walked into my apartment. He didn't say much, just sat at the kitchen table and nodded for me to play the recording again. I did. When it ended, he reached across the table and held my hand. Are you okay? Not, what are you going to do? Not, how could he? Just, are you okay? And the truth was, no, I wasn't. Not even close. I broke right there in front of my father. Sobs I didn't even know were waiting poured out of me like a dam giving way. He didn't tell me to stop, didn't try to fix it. He just held my hand. That was the moment I realized something important. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't overreacting, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let Fabian or anyone treat me like a convenience ever again. When I tell people how it all went down, they expect some grand dramatic showdown, shouting tears, maybe a glass of wine thrown in someone's face. But no, it started with pancakes. The morning after I broke down, Dad made breakfast like it was just another Saturday. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon drifted through the apartment, oddly comforting. Mom sat across from me with her planner open, but I could tell she wasn't focused. She was watching me, checking for cracks in me. I was just tired, not just physically. My soul felt wrung out like a sponge left too long in a sink. We ate in near silence. Dad finally said, "You ready to handle this?" I nodded. First, the apartment Dad had co-signed the lease, so he called the property management company right there from my kitchen table. "We need to remove a tenant and re-sign under a new contract," he told the woman on the line. She hesitated. Legal this notice that, but Dad wasn't playing games. What paperwork do I need to sign today to make that happen? Next, the car. Fabian had been driving the car I made payments on with help from my dad. We pulled up the insurance app and removed him from the policy. Just like that, Don transferred the payment responsibility to my account, but promised to continue helping for a few more months, his way of saying, "You're strong, but I've still got you." While Dad handled logistics, Mom and I made a list of Fabian's belongings. It wasn't much. A few boxes of clothes, his game console, his ridiculous neck massager that he insisted helped with his creative flow. Most of the furniture was either mine or things we bought using my parents' card. Emotionally, everything in that apartment felt tainted, but practically it was mostly mine. And then I remembered something, Catalina. Fabian's sister had been working at my dad's company for 6 months. She'd gotten the job after Fabian casually mentioned she was looking for a new opportunity. Dad had interviewed her himself, mostly as a favor to me. I hesitated to bring it up, but Mom saw the look on my face. "What is it?" I told them. Dad's jaw tensed. He picked up his phone again. He didn't fire her. That's not how he operates. But he sent an email to HR recommending her position be reviewed during the upcoming restructuring process. "No favors," he said. "Not anymore." By afternoon, we had our plan. Step by step, we would erase Fabian from my life. That evening, we packed up his things, box by box. I wrapped his framed photos in newspaper like I was preserving relics from a museum exhibit I never asked to curate. It was strange, so many of his things were gifts from me, inside jokes, moments I'd once treasured. Now they just felt sad. Around 10 p.m., Fabian's text started again. "Babe code's not working. You change it. Elle, what the hell? Let me in. It's freezing out here." Dad looked out the window and calmly closed the blinds. We didn't respond. We didn't need to. That night I slept in my childhood bed for the first time in years. The next morning we called Fabian's parents. Lydia picked up. She looked freshly made up like she hadn't been woken by the storm she helped cause. "Oh, hello, is everything okay? Dad didn't play nice?" He simply said, "I think you'll want to hear this," and he hit play on the recording. Watching their faces contort through the FaceTime screen was something I'll never forget. Lydia looked horrified not because of what was said, but because someone had heard it. Arthur tried to look surprised, but his expression stayed mostly blank. When it ended, Lydia jumped into damage control. It was just talk. Fabian didn't mean it. You know how men are when they're trying to impress their dads. Arthur muttered something about context and sense of humor. Dad cut them off. "Here's what's happening," he said. "Fabian is off the lease. He no longer has access to the car. Your daughter's job is being evaluated. If I see him near my daughter again, I will press charges." Lydia's tone changed instantly. She looked at me, eyes glistening. "You can't mean this, Elle. He loves you. You're good together. Don't throw away something real over a stupid dinner conversation." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Mom leaned in and said calmly, "Close your mouth." Lydia, goodbye, and Dad ended the call. That day, we delivered Fabian's boxes to the building manager and had them note he was no longer permitted inside the complex. We changed my digital locks. We changed my Netflix password. We removed his access to every part of my life. Physically, digitally, emotionally, around 4 p.m. Fabian showed up. He was pounding the buzzer, shouting up to my window like some sad rom-com character who thought the volume of his voice could undo reality. I watched him through the peephole. His face, the one I once kissed goodnight, now looked unfamiliar, ugly, even swollen with rage or regret. I couldn't tell. Dad stood behind me and whispered, "You're doing great." I didn't open the door, I didn't answer the texts, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt in control. You'd think once someone like Fabian is out of your life, you'd breathe easier. But the silence afterward, it's not peace. Not yet. It's the kind that buzzes in your ears loud, hollow, echoing with everything you didn't say when you had the chance. The first night after we cut him off, I didn't sleep. Not because he was outside yelling again, that part was over, but because my body was still bracing for something. I kept checking the peephole, the camera feed, the sound of every pipe in the wall. My phone stayed on silent, but it didn't stop lighting up. Unknown numbers, voicemails, emails, I hadn't even thought to check. They started off like you'd expect. "I'm sorry. It was a joke. I didn't mean any of it." But then they shifted. "You ruined my life. My sister got fired because of you. Your parents turned you into this." Then came the manipulation. "Remember when you had the flu and I made you soup? Remember our beach trip, how you looked at me like I was your future?" And then the threats. "You're nothing without your dad. No one will ever want you once I'm done telling people what you're really like." Every time I blocked a number, another one popped up, a hydra of harassment. I started writing down timestamps, saving screenshots, logging everything. But inside, I was unraveling, and honestly, I started to question myself. One afternoon, I sat on the couch with Julia, my closest friend since high school. She was the only one I hadn't told the full story, just that Fabian and I broke up and it got messy. She asked about the texts. I didn't answer. I just handed her my phone and played the recording. She sat frozen. I watched her go from confused to horrified to furious, and then she told me something that made me feel like the floor disappeared. He texted me, like 3 days ago. What did he say? She pulled out her phone. He said you were having some kind of breakdown, that you were saying crazy things about him, that your parents were enabling it. He asked if we should stage, like an intervention. I stared at her screen. I couldn't breathe. He was trying to flip the narrative, make me the unstable one, manipulate my friends, cast himself as the victim. I felt physically ill. Julia was already texting everyone in our group chat, "Don't respond to Fabian. He's lying." Ella's safe and smart and stronger than ever. She turned to me and said, "We've got your back, all of us." "Don't worry," I cried. The kind of cry that doesn't come with noise, just tears that won't stop falling no matter how many times you blink. But Fabian wasn't done. That week, I got an envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a 12-page handwritten letter. The first pages, love bombing nostalgia. No one knows you like I do. You're everything I ever wanted. The last page, rage. He threatened to release videos of us, ones that didn't exist, and claimed he had information about my dad's business that could destroy everything. I felt violated, cornered, contaminated. So I did what I should have done the moment I heard that recording. I filed for a restraining order. The officer who came to my apartment was calm but tired, like this wasn't new to her, like she'd seen this exact story play out dozens of times. But she took the report, she gathered the recordings, the screenshots, the envelope. A few days later, the order was granted. Fabian was legally banned from coming within 500 feet of me, my workplace, my building. He was fitted with an ankle monitor. I breathed not deeply, but enough. And then, he disappeared. 4 days later, I got a call. He'd removed the monitor. They were searching for him. He was officially in violation of the order. They told me to stay somewhere safe. My parents' house became a refuge. I slept in my childhood room, surrounded by old stuffed animals and high school soccer medals. It should have felt ridiculous, but instead it felt like a soft place to land. That night, I broke down again. Fully, Mom just held me. Dad sat nearby, silent, but there. That was enough. And yet, somehow, even after everything, I still felt haunted, not just by Fabian, by me, the version of myself that had believed him, defended him, loved him. I scrolled through old messages, photos, videos, the good ones, the happy ones. I hated how much I still missed the person I thought he was. That version never existed. I get that now, but grieving an illusion still hurts. The next morning, I was back in my apartment just to grab a few things. My coffee machine, my favorite blanket, my journal, and on the balcony, I found scratches on the door, marks from someone trying to force it open. He'd been there. Not long ago. I stood frozen, breath held, heart pounding. Then I grabbed the pepper spray from my bag and locked every door, window, and sole access point in that place. I was done being afraid. I knew in that moment healing wasn't going to be about forgetting what Fabian did. It was about refusing to let him take anything else. Not my future, not my home, not me. I don't know what healing is supposed to look like. I think I used to imagine it as this clean cinematic thing, like waking up one morning, stretching your arms, and feeling whole again. But the truth, it's messier than that. Some mornings I still flinch when my phone buzzes. Some nights I double-check the locks twice. Sometimes I reread his messages, not because I miss him, but because I still can't believe someone I loved so deeply saw me as convenient. But then there are other mornings like today where I make my coffee exactly how I like it, stand barefoot on the rug. I picked out alone and breathe without feeling a weight in my chest. Those moments matter more than I ever realized. After the police confirmed Fabian had violated the restraining order and removed his ankle monitor, I stayed at my parents' house for a while. It was safer, it was smarter, and I needed to feel small for a bit, not in a bad way, but in the way a child feels when they're wrapped in a blanket that smells like home. I spent a lot of those days just sitting, letting myself be. I painted my nails. I started reading again. I took slow walks in the neighborhood, letting the sun warm my face. I started a new playlist called For Breathing, full of soft songs that didn't make me cry, and I journaled pages and pages, everything. I was too scared to say out loud. Everything I never told Fabian, everything I never admitted to myself. I didn't realize how much I'd been silencing my own voice until I finally started writing it again. Eventually, I moved back into my apartment. I changed the locks again. Dad installed a new security camera on the fire escape. Julia gave me a big ceramic mug that said badass energy only and filled it with chamomile tea and chocolate. The first night I spent there alone, I made a promise to myself. You don't owe peace to anyone who made a battlefield out of your heart. I whispered it out loud. Lit a candle, let myself cry. Then I watched a dumb sitcom until I fell asleep on the couch wrapped in the softest blanket I owned. No nightmares that night. 1 week after that, I got a job offer. I hadn't expected a freelance gig I'd applied for months ago and forgotten about remote work. Flexible hours, writing content for a small wellness brand. I said yes before I even fully read the contract. It wasn't just a job, it was a step forward, and forward was all I wanted. A few days later, I bumped into Orlando, the neighbor who'd shut Fabian down that day at the door. He smiled, asked how I was doing, told me I looked stronger. I baked him cookies that night and a thank you card that simply read, "You have no idea how much you helped me that day." He texted me the next morning with a photo of an empty plate. "Best cookies ever? You ever think about starting a baking business?" I laughed. Not politely, like a real belly-deep laugh. The kind I hadn't felt in months. I didn't realize how badly I'd missed that sound. Then came the real surprise. I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a post from Catalina Fabian's sister. It was a long caption. Something about starting fresh, moving out of state, learning to take responsibility, and at the end of it, she apologized, not directly to me, but it felt intentional. Sometimes we get so caught up in loyalty that we forget what's actually right. I enabled things I shouldn't have. I knew better. I'm sorry to anyone I hurt by staying silent. I didn't reach out. I didn't like it, but I screenshotted it and saved it in a folder on my phone titled Proof of Growth. Because sometimes healing isn't just about cutting people off. It's about knowing when to let go without needing revenge. I still get texts from blocked numbers now and then. Still get that cold flicker in my stomach when I see someone in a crowd who looks vaguely like him. But those moments pass faster now. I'm not waiting for justice anymore. I'm building peace. Last night, I lit a candle and played the old voice recording one final time, not to punish myself, just to mark the end. Fabian's voice came through the speaker like a ghost I no longer feared. She's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable. I closed the file, deleted it from my phone, emptied the trash. I didn't need to hear it again. I knew what it said, and I knew who I was now. I'm not the girl who smiled while slicing pie and pretending nothing was wrong. I'm the woman who rebuilt her life piece by piece without waiting for an apology. I'm the woman who saved herself. And if you were me, what would you have done?